Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I'm sharing 26 of my favorite Valentine DIYs that I've shared so far here on my channel. Since this is a combination of a ton of my projects put together, they are numbered a little bit out of order, so just keep that in mind while you're watching. Now let's go ahead and jump right on in.
For the first DIY today, I'm making a standing heart. For this one, I'm using this All You Need Is Love heart shape from Dollar Tree. And because this sign has a ton of glitter on the front of it, I want to remove that. So I'm taking my putty knife and I'm scraping all of that glitter off. Once I have the glitter all removed, I'm then painting my entire heart shape with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Ivory. And I am going to be using what's originally the back of this heart for the front of my project today. But I am also painting what used to be the front so that my entire project looks nice and finished. Once that color was all dry, I then took my folk art chalk paint in the color Castle on my Dollar Tree stencil brush, and I dry brushed this color around all of the edges of my heart, and then I did it just a little bit along the front as well to give it a nice rustic look. I'm also going to be using one of these sticker hearts from Dollar Tree in this project today, but I did not want to use the glitter side of it, so I just peeled off the sticker part of it and then I painted the unfinished wood portion of it with my Waverly paint in the color Ivory. Next, I'm using one of these red felt hearts from Dollar Tree. They do come in a pack of 12, but I'm only using one of them today. I'm placing hot glue on the back side of the felt heart, and then I'm placing it right in the center of my wood block heart. And then I'm adding the smaller heart that I painted right in the center of my felt heart, and I used hot glue on the back side of that to attach it. Once all of my hearts are all attached, I'm then taking a piece of jute and I'm wrapping it around the front of my heart, and I used a little bit of hot glue on the back side of the wood block heart just to hold the jute into place so that it was easier for me to wrap around. And as I was wrapping the jute around the very front of my heart, I did crisscross the jute a little bit just to give it some more detail, and then I just hot glued the end of that piece of jute along the back side. For the very last step in this project, I used another piece of jute to make a really simple small bow. Once I have the bow all made, I cut off the end pieces and then hot glued that bow right in the center of my smallest heart. And here is my standing heart all finished. This is such a simple and inexpensive project. It only took me a few minutes to create, and this is perfect for a tiered tray or shelf. Now moving into DIY number 2, I'm making a heart topiary. For this one, I'm using one of Dollar Tree's 2.5-inch terracotta pots, and I'm starting by painting this with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Ivory, and I'm really messily painting this pot, and I'm leaving some of that terracotta color so that it peeks through the white or the ivory color that I'm painting on. Once the ivory color is all dry, I'm then taking my folk art chalk paint in the color Castle on a Dollar Tree stencil brush, and I'm just dabbing this paint over top of the ivory color, and then I'm also adding another color to this pot, and this is the folk art chalk paint in the color Java, and again I'm just dabbing that color right over top of the other two colors, and then I'm using a little bit more of that ivory colored chalk paint over top of all of the other colors, and this is just going to add a nice layered, like chippy, worn, rustic look to my pot. Once that's all painted, I'm then using some jute, and I'm just using a little bit of hot glue to keep the jute into place while I wrap it around, and I wrapped it around about 4 times and then just cut the end of the jute off and then hot glued the other end piece of that down. Once that was on, I wanted to add a really small simple bow, so again just used a really small piece of jute to make that bow, cut the 2 ends of that off, and then hot glued that right in the center of my jute on my terracotta pot. Next, I'm going to be using a 4-inch foam ball and then some of this Spanish moss from Dollar Tree. The foam ball, I believe, is either from Hobby Lobby or Michael's, but you can pretty much get these at any craft store. And then for the Spanish moss, I'm just cutting that down a little bit so that it's easier for me to work with. And then I'm using some hot glue to attach the Spanish moss to my foam ball. So I would just put hot glue on the foam ball, take a chunk of that Spanish moss and place it onto the glue. You do want to be careful when doing this that you do not burn your fingers. and I continued this step until I had the entire foam ball covered with my Spanish moss. Then I used my scissors to cut the Spanish moss around the ball to give it a more manicured actual ball shape because it was looking really messy. This Spanish moss can be really messy, so just keep that in mind if you're going to be doing this project. Another item I'm using in this project are these unfinished wood hearts from Hobby Lobby. They do come 12 hearts in a pack, and I am using all 12 of them today. I'm painting them with my folk art chalk paint in the color Tuscan Red, and I only did one coat of this paint on each one of my hearts. After the paint has dried on all of my hearts, I'm then attaching the hearts to my ball right on top of that Spanish moss that I've already glued onto my ball. I placed hot glue on the back side of each heart and then just pressed that onto the ball. I continued this step for all 12 of the hearts, and I did leave a space in between each one of the hearts. And then along the bottom of my ball, I left that blank without any hearts because I'm going to be attaching that right to my terracotta pot for the very last step. And here is my heart topiary all finished. This one, again, only took me a few minutes to create. And what I love about this is it's a little bit different than your average Valentine's Day decor. For DIY number 3, I'm making a Scrabble letter wreath. For this one, I'm using one of these unfinished wood hearts from Dollar Tree, and I'm first removing the jute hanger that's on the wood heart, and then I'm using my Craftsmart wood stain in the color brown. This is from Michael's, and you can see it's very well loved. To apply it, I'm using an old towel and I'm just rubbing it on top of the entire heart. As you can see here, it's giving me this really nice stained look. And as you guys know, I love this stain so much because it's water-based and it dries really fast. Even though I really love this color, I decided to add ivory color over top of this. So I'm using just a fan brush that I had laying around, and I'm dry brushing the Waverly chalk paint in the color ivory over top of my stained heart. I just wanted this to have kind of like that rustic chippy look, so that's why I'm adding this ivory color. I'm also using some of these Scrabble letter blocks, and these ones are from Dollar General, and then one of these unfinished wood hearts from Dollar Tree, and this heart did come from the assorted wood value pack from Dollar Tree, which if you see in your store, I suggest you pick it up because it has a lot of great pieces in it. And I'm painting that heart with the folk art chalk paint in the color Tuscan Red, and I only did one coat of paint for this heart. Once everything was all painted, I started assembling my letters and my heart onto the front of my painted heart, and I just wanted to make sure that I had everything in place where I wanted it to be before I start gluing everything down, and this is how I decided I wanted it to look. So then I just started placing the hot glue on the back side of all of my letter tiles and just putting them back into place to attach them. Now I'm going to be creating my bow. For my bow, I'm going to be using two different kinds of ribbon. I'm going to be using this red burlap ribbon from Dollar General and then just your regular burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree. I cut the red piece larger than what I'm cutting the regular burlap from Dollar Tree. I did the one from Dollar Tree just a few inches shorter than my red ribbon. Then I'm taking a second piece of red ribbon and I'm cutting that a few inches shorter than my regular burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree. Then I'm going to be taking some hot glue and I am attaching the two ends of my pieces of ribbon together to form a circle, and I did this on all three pieces of my ribbon. Now that I have all of my pieces of ribbon glued into circles, I'm then stacking those circles going from largest to smallest. Once I have them all stacked, I'm then taking them and scrunching them together in the center to form my bow. I'm then using a piece of jute and I'm wrapping that around the center of my bow several times, and then I'm tying that piece of jute off along the back in a knot, and then that is going to be my bow. For the tail ends of my bow, I'm using another strip of the burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree, and I took a piece of jute and I tied that around the very center of that strip of ribbon, and then I'm hot gluing that strip of ribbon onto the actual bow that I created using some hot glue. After I got my bow all made, I then placed it where I'm going to be attaching it on my heart and realized that the tail ends were just too long, so I ended up cutting those down quite a bit, and I did cut those in a diagonal shape. Once I had the bow exactly how I wanted it to be, I used hot glue on the front of my heart and then just attached the bow to the glue to fully attach it. Then for the very last step, I'm using a piece of jute to restring it through the holes that were already in the heart, and that is going to be my hanger for my Scrabble letter wreath. And this is my Scrabble letter heart wreath all finished. This one was so easy and I think it turned out super cute. I love the rustic colors with that pop of red, but what I love even more is you can really customize it by using whatever words that you want. Moving right along to DIY number 4, I'm making a love heart wreath. For this one, I'm using one of these wood slat unfinished wood hearts from Dollar Tree. They have this one where the slats go horizontally, and then they also have one where the wood slats go vertically, and I think these are so cute. I'm also using one of these unfinished wood words. This one says love, and it's from the Target dollar spot this year, and it was $3. I'm first starting by painting the very top slat of my heart with my folk art chalk paint in the color Vintage Victorian. I did have to do 2 coats of this paint since it is a little bit more sheer. Then the next slat going down I did with my folk art chalk paint in the color Tuscan Red. You guys know I love this color, and I only did 1 coat of paint for this one. And then for the third slat going down, I used my Craftsmart wood stain in the color brown, and to apply it I just used an old rag. And then for the very bottom of my heart, again, I used that Vintage Victorian chalk paint from Folk Art and did 2 coats for that. Then for the wood in between all of my slats, I painted my Waverly paint in the color Ivory, and I used a really small paintbrush to apply the paint. Once that was all dry, I then took my Folk Art chalk paint in the color Java on a Dollar Tree stencil brush, and I dry brushed this color over top of my entire heart. I wanted it to have that rustic, distressed look that you guys know I love so much. So I did this on the entire heart, and I really loved how it looked, but I did want to add a little bit more detail. So I took that Waverly paint in the color Ivory on a smaller paintbrush, and I just lightly painted this color on top of all of the slats, and it ended up giving me more of that rustic, chippy paint look that I really like. Then for my love word cutout, I'm painting this with that Waverly paint in the color Ivory, and I did paint the entire word this color around all of the edges and then on the inside of like the scroll letters as well. Once that was all painted, I moved back onto my heart, and I'm adding some ribbon. I'm using some of this lace ribbon from Dollar Tree, and I just cut that down to size for the top slat that is pink and then the bottom pink slat as well. And then for the red slat, I am cutting a piece of my burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree down to size, and then I did end up cutting that in half because it was just a little bit too thick. Once that was all cut, I then started gluing my pieces of ribbon on. I just placed hot glue on the back side of my heart and then attached the 2 sides of the ribbon on top of those pieces of glue, and I continued this step for all of my ribbon. For my slat that I used the stain on, I ended up using a piece of this white cotton cord. I thought this would add a little bit of something different, so I just cut that piece down to size and then hot glued the 2 ends of that along the back side, just like I did with all of the ribbon. Next, to attach my love word, I'm placing hot glue along the entire back side, and then I'm just pressing that kind of in a diagonal shape right along my heart. Now I'm making the hanger for my heart wreath. I'm taking 2 pieces of this white cotton cord from Hobby Lobby, and I'm tying those together in a knot and then laying that knot down onto my heart and just figuring out how long I actually want my hangers to be. Once I have that all decided, I'm then cutting the 2 pieces of white cotton cord and then tying those 2 pieces in a knot on the other end. Then to attach the hanger, I'm just placing hot glue right on the 2 knots and then just pressing those down right over top of the pre-drilled holes that were in the top of my heart. And this is my love heart wreath all finished. This, just like the other projects in today's video, was super easy to do, and I really love all of these color combinations together. For the fifth and final DIY today, I'm making a wall sign. For this one, I'm using a scrap piece of wood that I had, and this measures at 24 inches by 11.5 inches. I'm then painting this entire wood piece with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Ivory, and I did do 2 coats of this paint just to get everything covered up nicely the way I wanted it to be. Next, I'm taking one of these really small tea light candles. This one is probably from Dollar Tree, and I'm rubbing the wax from the candle on my wood surface where I want to have a chippy paint look. I've tried this method in the past and I really love the effects of it. So anywhere you want to have chippy paint, you want to apply your wax from your candle. So I'm just rubbing it all over my entire surface and around the edges really well. Once I have my wax all applied, then I'm going in with my second paint color, and I'm using my Folk Art chalk paint in the color Castle. And I did end up painting 2 coats of this paint over top of that wax. I'm also using these 2 smaller scrap pieces of wood, and these ones are 12 inches by 1.5 inches, and I'm doing the exact same thing that I did with my larger piece of wood. I'm painting both of these with my Waverly paint in the color Ivory. Once that paint has dried, I then went in again with my candle wax, rubbed that over both pieces of wood where I want my paint to look really chippy. Once I have the wax on, then I went in with that Folk Art chalk paint in the color Castle and painted 2 coats of that over top. After all of my paint has completely dried, I'm then going in with some duct tape and I'm applying that to the very front of my sign, and I'm just overlapping each section of tape. And then once I have the entire front covered in the tape, I'm simply just peeling back the tape, and you'll see here that all of the areas where I've applied the wax is taking off that top layer of paint that I painted on, that Folk Art Castle color. It's chipping that right away so that you can see that ivory color that I painted underneath. For my 2 smaller pieces of wood, I actually ran out of my duct tape, so I had to use some packing tape that I had laying around, and to my surprise, it actually worked just the same as the other tape. I thought maybe it wouldn't work the same because it's just not as sticky, but just know that if you don't have any duct tape, you can use packing tape. Next, I'm using some hot glue to attach the 2 smaller pieces of wood to my larger piece of wood. I just made sure that I had them centered or spaced out exactly where I wanted them to be before I hot glued them down. And as you'll see, I already have the stencil that I'm going to be using for today in the center of my wood. I'm using tape on each side of my stencil to hold it into place when I'm painting. This says, "Together they built a life they loved." And this stencil is from Joann Fabrics, but it did come in a pack of stencils. I'll try to have those linked down below in the description box. And then the paint that I'm using for all of the words, it is from Waverly, and it's the color Ink. And I'm using my Dollar Tree stencil brush to apply the paint. And once that paint was dry, I then removed my stencil. Here is my "Together They Built a Life They Loved" sign all finished. This one you could definitely use year round, and I just love the chippy paint look of this. For DIY number 1, I'm making a wooden decorative house. For this one, I'm using this love paper from Hobby Lobby, and I'm also using this wooden block shape house from Michaels. I'm first placing the wooden house shape onto my paper and then using a pen to trace all the way around it. Once I have it all traced, then I'm using some scissors to cut that shape out. Now that I have my paper all cut out, I'm then painting on this matte Mod Podge along the back side of my paper, and I am making sure to get a lot of that Mod Podge around all of the edges of my paper so that they don't curl up once I place it on the front piece of my wood, and that is what you will see me doing here. And I just make sure that I have all of the bubbles out of the piece of paper, and then I let that sit and dry for about 15 minutes. Some of my paper did hang over the front edges of my wood, so to cut those down a little bit, I used some sandpaper and just sanded around all of the edges to get that extra paper off. I have seen Jennifer from A Little Bit of Calm and Crazy do this, so I started giving it a try and it works so well. Once all of my edges were all sanded, I then wanted to make sure that everything was sealed on the front and then around all of the edges too, so that those don't curl up. So I just placed some more of that matte Mod Podge over top, and then I let that sit for another 15 minutes just to make sure that it all has dried. Once the Mod Podge was all dry, I then took my Waverly chalk paint in the color Ink and a small paintbrush, and I painted that color around all of the sides of the house, and then I also did the back side of the house the same color. I did use a small paintbrush so that I could get more precise lines when painting right around those edges where I have the paper. I did the painting after I sanded because I knew if I sanded first that all of my paint would come off, and I only did one coat of this paint around the sides and then the back as well. Next, I'm using one of these heart stickers from Dollar Tree. The one I'm using for this project is the unfinished wooden one, and I'm painting that with my folk art chalk paint in the color Tuscan Red. I love this color because it's a little bit more of a deeper red and not so bright, and it goes perfect with farmhouse and rustic decor. After the paint is all dry, I'm then hot gluing my heart to the very front side of my wooden house over top of my paper. Then I'm adding a piece of jute, and I'm hot gluing that jute along the back side of my house just so that it holds it into place. I'm then wrapping that jute around the front of the house about 3 times, and then I'm taking the 2 ends of the jute and I'm hot gluing those along the back side to hold them into place. And just to add a little bit more detail, I'm using a small piece of jute and I'm making a really simple bow out of the jute, and then I'm hot gluing that bow right in the front center of my heart. And this is my decorative wooden house all finished. This was such an easy and affordable project, and it goes perfect as an accent piece on a tiered tray. Now moving into DIY number 2, I'm making wooden XO blocks. For this one, I'm using 4 of these cube blocks from this pack of blocks from Hobby Lobby. I'm also using my Craft Smart wood stain in the color brown, and this is from Michaels. I'm first starting by using an old towel to apply the stain to all 4 of my cube blocks. This is a water-based stain and it dries really, really fast, so I love it, and you guys will see me using it in a lot of my projects. I'm also going to be using 2 of these unfinished mini wooden hearts from Dollar Tree. These did come in the value pack of wood that you can now get at Dollar Tree, and I'm painting them with my folk art chalk paint in the color Tuscan Red, and I did 1 coat of paint on each heart. I'm using 2 of these X Scrabble letter blocks, and I picked these ones up from Dollar General, and they come in a pack of 60. I'm then taking the first X and I'm hot gluing that onto my first cube. I'm then taking the first heart that I painted and I'm hot gluing that onto the second cube, and then I'm hot gluing the second X to my third cube, and then my second heart to my fourth cube. And you'll see here that I have all of the cubes glued together with beads in between, but I ended up not liking that and I took it all apart, which you'll see here in a second. So I didn't show myself gluing it all together because I just really didn't like how it looked. So once I had it all taken apart, I'm then just hot gluing all 4 of my cubes together, going X and then like O for the heart, and then X and then another heart. And that was pretty much it for this project. I think it was super easy and I really love how this one turned out. This project, just like the last one, works perfect as an accent piece and great on a tiered tray like I have it paired here. Now moving into DIY number 3, I'm making an XOXO picture. For this one, I'm using one of the 5x7 canvases from Dollar Tree and my utility knife. I'm taking my utility knife and I'm cutting around all of the outside edges of the staples because I'm cutting this canvas off of its frame. You want to be really careful when doing this and make sure that you use a sharp utility knife. This will help from actually cutting yourself if you have a nice sharp knife. Once I have it all cut around all of the edges of my canvas, I'm then just pulling it off of that wood frame. For this project, I'm also using 7 of these larger popsicle sticks from Dollar Tree. I need them to go along the back side of the canvas frame, and I just marked those off where I need them to be cut down. And what's great about these is these can actually be cut with scissors. So once I had one of them marked off and already cut down, I just used that as a guide to cut the rest of the 6 popsicle sticks the exact same size. Next, I'm painting my entire wood frame with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Ivory. I only did 1 coat of this paint, and this wood frame is actually really rough, and sometimes you get the rough wood on your frames underneath the canvases, and sometimes you have a more smooth wood. This one ended up being very rough, which I didn't mind because I wanted it to have a really rustic look. Once that ivory color was all dry, I then went in with my folk art chalk paint in the color Java, and I used a stencil brush to apply this paint. And since the wood around my frame was really rough, it was great for dry brushing because all of those little rough spots on my wood picked up that Java color really nicely to give me that rustic look that I was looking for. Now back to the popsicle sticks that I've already cut down. I'm using my Craft Smart wood stain in the color brown, and I'm using an old towel to apply the stain to all 7 of my cut down popsicle sticks. After the stain was all dry, I'm then hot gluing those to the back side of my painted frame. I just placed the hot glue on both sides of the frame and then placed the popsicle stick with the stain going forward onto the wood frame, and I just continued that same step until I had all 7 of them attached to the back of my frame. For this project, I'm also using these unfinished XO letters, and then I'm using 2 of these unfinished wood hearts from this assorted wood value pack from Dollar Tree. The wood letters, I believe, are from Walmart. I'm painting the wood letters with that Waverly chalk paint in the color Ivory, and I only did 1 coat of paint for all 4 of my letters. And then for my heart, I did the large one with the Waverly paint in Ivory once again, and then the smaller heart I painted with my folk art chalk paint in the color Tuscan Red. Next, I'm using 3 of these red felt rose stickers from Dollar General. They did come in a pack of 9 for only $1. I'm removing the stickers off of the back of all of the roses because I'm going to be hot gluing mine in a cluster on the top left-hand corner of my sign. After I have all of my roses glued on, then I'm going to be attaching my XO letters. I just put them in place exactly where I want them to be before I start gluing them down, and I am using hot glue on the back side of each letter and then just pressing them back into place. For the last step, I'm attaching my 2 painted hearts in the top right-hand corner of my sign. I did the larger white heart on the bottom, and then I attached the smaller red heart right on top of the white heart. Here is the XO sign all finished. This is such a simple and cute accent piece to add to your decor this Valentine's Day. Now for DIY number 4, I'm making a floral box. For this project, I'm starting with one of these unfinished wood crates from Dollar Tree, and I'm also using my Craft Smart wood stain in the color brown. You guys know I love this stain. And I'm applying the stain using an old towel, and I'm just rubbing the stain on the entire wood crate. Now this crate does have like the little indentations on the 2 sides. So to get the stain in those little grooves, I am using a really small paintbrush just to paint the stain inside of the grooves. And then I'm using my towel just to wipe it off and remove any of the excess stain. Next, I'm going to be using some unfinished wood pieces from this assorted wood value pack from Dollar Tree. I'm using 4 of these wood circles, and I'm painting them with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Ivory. I did 1 coat of this paint on all 4 circles. Then I'm using 4 of these mini unfinished wood hearts from that same value pack of wood, and I'm painting these with my folk art chalk paint in the color Tuscan Red. Now it's time to start assembling everything together. I'm using my 4 wood painted circles on the front side of my crate. I'm just getting those all into place before I start hot gluing each circle down. After I have all of my wood circles attached, I'm then attaching the red hearts that I painted right in the center of the wood circles using some hot glue. Next, I'm adding some of this floral foam to the very bottom of my wood crate. The foam I picked up from Dollar Tree, and I did have to cut one of my pieces down a little bit to get it to fit into the bottom of my crate. But once that was all in, then it was time to start placing some of my flowers inside of the foam. And for this one, I'm using some of these eucalyptus stems from Walmart. And then I also had some of these big roses just from over the years. I've had them from another project, and I decided to use them in today's project. So I'm cutting down the eucalyptus stems a little bit so that they could fit better in my wood crate. And I did have to cut like the tops of them off as well because they were a little bit too long. So I just started placing them in the foam where I wanted them to be, and then I was going to use 2 or 3 of those roses, but I actually ended up only using one right in the center of this piece because they are kind of large, and it ended up looking really beautiful. I think you can use any kind of flowers or roses that you want for this project, but these are just the ones that I chose to use. Once I had all of the eucalyptus stems and then the rose in the middle, I decided to add some of these little white like baby's breath flowers around the entire rose just to add a little something extra. This is my floral box all finished. Another easy and affordable project that would be perfect to add to your Valentine's Day decor this year. Now for the 5th and final DIY today, I'm making a shadow box sign. For my sign, I'm going to be using one of these square unfinished wood pieces from Michaels, and I'm painting this entire piece with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Ivory, and I only did a 1 coat of this paint. After that paint has completely dried, I'm then going in with a smaller paintbrush and my folk art chalk paint in the color Java, and I'm dry brushing this paint on the entire piece. I want this to have that nice rustic farmhouse look that I love so much. Then I'm painting this unfinished wood circle with my folk art chalk paint in the color Tuscan Red. These did come in a pack of, I believe, 5 unfinished wood circles, and I got them from Hobby Lobby. Then for this project, I'm using the numbers 1 and 4 for 14, and I'm painting them with my Waverly paint in the color Ivory, and these ones are from Dollar Tree. Once I have all that painted, then I'm using some of this burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree, and I'm just cutting it down to size so that it will fit to go around the center of my wood circle that I've painted, and I'm just hot gluing the 2 ends of that burlap ribbon along the back side of the circle so that it goes along the front. Next, I'm attaching my circle to my shadow box. I'm placing hot glue along the back side and then just pressing that right in the center of the box. And then to attach my numbers, I'm using hot glue along the back side of each number. This is my shadow box all finished. It is such a simple and easy, affordable project for Valentine's Day. So if you're looking for a quick project, this one would be perfect.
Moving right on into DIY number 1. The materials I used to make this one were a 5x7 frame that I got from Dollar Tree, folk art chalk paint in Tuscan Red, Waverly chalk paint in plaster, paintbrushes, jute, burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree, crocheted ribbon from Hobby Lobby, scissors, my hot glue gun, music note craft paper from Hobby Lobby, and wooden hearts from Dollar Tree. I'm first starting out by taking my 5x7 frame apart and then using the backing of the frame as a guide to help me trace out my music note paper. Once I have that all traced, I'm then cutting my paper down to size. Next, I'm painting my frame with my chalk paint in the color Plaster. I did do 2 coats of this paint. Since my frame had that shiny texture, I wanted to make sure that it was completely covered and that my paint didn't look streaky. I'm using the back side of this wooden ornament heart from Dollar Tree, and I'm painting it in my chalk paint color Tuscan Red, and I only did 1 coat of this paint. Next, I'm measuring how long I want this burlap ribbon to be to go across my heart, and then I'm cutting that down into a smaller strip. Once I have the ribbon cut down to the size that I want it, I'm then gluing the ends of the ribbon on the back side of the heart so that the ribbon is wrapped around the front. I'm measuring this crochet ribbon along the front of my heart, cutting that down to size, and then gluing the ends of the ribbon along the back side of the heart over top of the burlap ribbon that I just attached.
Now I'm attaching my music note paper onto the backing part of my frame. I'm just using some hot glue along all of the backing and then pressing the paper over top. I'm then stringing a piece of jute through the already pre-drilled hole that's in my wooden heart. I'm then putting my frame back together, but I'm not closing the back side of it on yet. I'm going to be stringing the jute that's on the heart through the very top center of my frame. This is going to be hanging on the top of the glass like an ornament. Once I have that centered where I want it, I close the frame up and then just hot glue the jute piece down along the back side. And that was the last step for this project, and this is my framed wooden heart all finished. I love how this one turned out. It was so easy to do. It's really simple, but yet still really beautiful at the same time. Moving on into DIY number 2, the materials I used to make this one were a 5-inch foam ball from Michaels, a glass candlestick from Dollar Tree, rose stems, these ones I'm using from a previous project so they're already cut, Waverly chalk paint in plaster, paintbrushes, and some jute. I started this project out by painting my glass candlestick holder with my chalk paint in the color plaster. I did have to do 3 different coats of this paint. I would have preferred to use a white spray paint, but I was all out, so if you have spray paint that would work a lot better. When painting chalk paint over glass, I find that it helps if you wait between each coat a while. You may think that it's dry, but it might not be, and if the paint's not completely dry, it usually pulls up from the glass. Next, I'm taking some of these roses that I'm using from a previous project. Mine are already cut, but if yours are not cut, you'll just need to cut them down to where you still have a good amount of the stem left on the rose, because you're going to be placing that stem right into the foam ball. I'm using 2 different color roses, this ivory and yellow color. I really love how they go together. I'm just placing each stem of the rose into the foam ball, and as I go along, I'm just switching up the colors as I feel needed. This project could not get any easier. I'm literally just placing the stem of each rose into the ball, and I'm leaving the bottom of the ball uncovered with roses because I'm going to be gluing that part onto my candlestick. Now that I have my ball all completely covered with roses, I'm placing some hot glue on the very top of my candlestick, a generous amount I would say, and then just placing the center of the bottom of that ball right on the glue to attach it. You could leave it just like this, but I decided I wanted to add a piece of jute around the center of my candlestick. I doubled up my jute and then wrapped it around the middle of my candlestick around 3 times and then just tied a simple bow. I cut off any of the long ends of the jute, and that was it for this project. That was the last step. This is my rose topiary all finished. This one was also so easy to do, and it would be great as a centerpiece. This project could even be completed using all products from Dollar Tree. Now moving on to the third and final DIY for today. The products I used to make this one were this heart-shaped wreath form from Dollar Tree, striped fabric from Hobby Lobby, cream color fabric from Hobby Lobby, and also burlap fabric from Hobby Lobby, pearl berry stems from Hobby Lobby, crocheted ribbon also from Hobby Lobby, jute, scissors, and my hot glue gun. For this project, I'm starting by cutting my striped fabric into strips, and the size that I'm cutting my strips into is 1 inch in width by 8 inches in length. I'm then folding my fabric in half so that I can get more strips out of each cut that I make to my fabric. I'm then using that single cut strip that I already made as a guide to help me finish cutting my other strips the exact same size. For this striped fabric, I am using scrap fabric, so I'm not 100% sure on the exact number of fabric that I used, but I would say it was probably a little over 1/4 yard. I'm then measuring this cream color fabric the same as I did the striped fabric. I'm doing this one as well with the 1 inch width by 8 inches long. For this fabric, I used the same amount as the striped, about a little over 1/4 yard. For this burlap fabric, I'm not using as many strips of this on my wreath, so I don't have to cut as many of them, but I am doing them a little bit larger than the other strips. I'm cutting these ones at 3 inches widthwise by 10 inches long, and I couldn't double up the fabric when cutting since burlap is a little bit thicker. Next, I'm starting to assemble my wreath. I have all of my pre-cut strips of fabric laid out next to me, and I'm starting to just tie on each strip of fabric onto the wires of the wreath. I'm switching between the striped color and the cream color as I go. I'll do a cream color one, then striped, cream, then striped again. I'm just tying each strip of fabric over top of the wires of the heart wreath form. And every so often I'll add a strip of that burlap fabric that I had cut, and I'm doing it the same as I did the other pieces of fabric. I'm just tying it in a knot around one of the wires, and I'll do like one on the inner part, and then a little while later I'll do another one on the middle wire, and then a little while later I'll do one on the outer wire. Now I'm tying on some of this crocheted ribbon that I picked up from Hobby Lobby. I'm adding it throughout my entire wreath. I'm moving over the strips that I've already tied on and then just tying the crocheted ribbon around one of the wires, and I'm just adding them wherever I think that they're needed. Next, I'm using some scissors to cut these pearl berries off of their stems. This is going to make it a little bit easier for me to attach them to my wreath. To attach the berries to my wreath, I'm placing hot glue right on the stem. Then I'm placing the stem inside of one of the knots on my strips of fabric, and I'm continuing to do that same step until I have these berries all the way around my wreath. It can sometimes be a little tricky getting each stem inside of the knots, but it will definitely help the stem stay in place. And for the last step, I'm adding a hanger to my wreath using a piece of jute. I'm tying the jute along the back side of my wreath on the top wire. Here is my heart-shaped rag wreath all finished. I love how all of these colors look together, and this one was again really easy, just like the other projects in today's video. This one took a little bit longer because you had to tie on all of the fabric, but I really love the end result. For the first DIY, I'm making a felt heart topiary, and for this project I used two 2.5-inch pots from Dollar Tree, two 3-inch foam balls from Hobby Lobby, two 6-inch dowels from Dollar Tree, red felt from Walmart and also white felt from Walmart, Waverly chalk paint and plaster, folk art chalk paint and castle, paintbrushes, floral foam, Spanish moss from Dollar Tree and also floral moss from Dollar Tree, jute, my hot glue gun, scissors, sewing needles, a Sharpie marker, red and white twine from the Target Dollar Spot, and also white cotton ribbon from the Target Dollar Spot. I'm starting this project by painting both of my terracotta pots with this Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster. I'm very messily painting this on, and I'm not doing too thick of a coat because I did want some of that original pot color to pop through. Next, I'm painting both of my wooden dowels with my chalk paint in the color Castle. I'm not being too precise when painting this one on. I did want some of that wood color to show through so that my dowels had a nice distressed look. Now I'm making my roses for my topiary. I'm tracing around the packaging to this ribbon as a guide to help me create all of the circles to make my roses. I'm then folding the felt in half before I start cutting out the circle. This is going to make it so I'm able to cut out 2 circles at one time, and all of my circles were 3 inches in size. If you wanted to have a larger or smaller roses, you would just change the size of the circle that you're making. Here I'm continuing that same step of making my circles and cutting them out until I have all of my circles completely made. Next, I'm forming all of my roses. I'm folding my felt circles in half and then starting to roll them up. I'm then adding some hot glue and then continuing to roll the felt all the way up. Once I have everything all rolled together, I'm adding a pin at the very bottom to hold everything in place until my hot glue dries. I'm then continuing those same steps until I have all of my roses formed. It does take quite a while to form all of the roses, but trust me, it's worth it in the end. Once all of those are made, I'm then simply taking out all of the pins after all of the hot glue has dried. You could leave your roses just like this, but I wanted to have them a little bit flatter on the bottom and easier for me to glue down onto my ball. So here I'm just cutting off the very tip and making them just a tad bit shorter. Now I'm adding my painted wooden dowel to the center of my foam ball. I'm just pushing the dowel right inside the foam, and then I'm adding some hot glue inside of the hole that I just formed with my dowel and then all around the dowel. And I'm making sure that I'm holding it into place until all of my hot glue has dried. Now it's time to finally start attaching the roses to my ball. I'm just placing some hot glue right on the tip of the rose and then placing it down onto the foam ball. I'm holding it into place until the hot glue has completely dried so that the roses don't slip and slide around. And I'm continuing to do this step over and over again. But as I start getting more roses on, I did want to have the roses attached to each other. So I started putting hot glue on the side of the rose as well as on the tip, and then placing it down next to each rose and holding it into place until everything has dried. Next, I'm using some scissors to cut down this floral foam. I need it to fit inside of my pot, so I just keep cutting it down and measuring it, cutting it down, measuring it some more until it's the perfect size to fit in my pot. I'm then pressing my dowel rod right in the center of my floral foam, then taking it out, adding some hot glue into the hole that I just made, and then pressing the dowel back inside of the hole, and I'm holding everything into place until the glue dries. I really wanted to add some Spanish moss to this project, so to do that, I'm putting hot glue inside of the pot and then also all around that floral foam, and then just pressing the Spanish moss over top of the glue to attach it. I'm continuing to do that until I have all of my Spanish moss covering my floral foam. Once I have that all done, then I'm just taking some scissors and trimming it down a little bit so that it's not too overwhelming. I really wanted to add some ribbon around the top of my pot. Here I decided to go with this cotton ribbon that I picked up from the Target dollar spot, and I'm just hot gluing it around the very top of my pot. I'm also adding some of this red and white twine right underneath that white cotton ribbon that I just attached, and I also picked this one up from the Target dollar spot, and I'm attaching it the same as I did the white ribbon. I also created a white rose topiary using 3 different size circles. I used the packaging from Ribbon once again to create my circles. I did a 5-inch circle, a 3-inch, and a 2-inch one. The only difference besides the sizes of the roses for this topiary was I used a floral moss instead of Spanish moss on the bottom, and I attached it the same way using hot glue, and then I also added a piece of jute around the center of my pot. Here are my felt rose topiaries all finished. I just love how they turned out. And what's great about this project is you can switch up the color of the felt for your roses and even switch up the ribbon on the bottom to make them fit better with your own home decor. Now moving on to DIY number 2, I'll be making a hanging heart sign. And for this project, I used these heart place card holders from the Target dollar spot, 12-inch by 5-inch scrap wood filler, Waverly chalk paint in plaster, folk art chalk paint in Tuscan red, paintbrushes, buttons from Dollar Tree, jute, burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree, scissors, sandpaper, and my hot glue gun. For this project, I started out by filling the open slots in these wooden heart place card holders with some wood filler. I did do 2 different coats of the filler. I did the first coat, waited for that to dry, and then added the second coat of filler. After my filler was all completely dry, then I took my 120 grit sandpaper and just sanded down any of the rough edges. I then painted all 3 of my hearts with my chalk paint in the color Tuscan red. I did have to do 2 different coats of this paint, but I made sure that I got around all of the edges of the hearts because that will be showing in this project. Next, I'm painting both of my 12-inch by 5-inch pieces of wood with my chalk paint in the color plaster. I did have to do 2 different coats of paint because my wood is pretty rough in texture. Once my paint has completely dried, I'm then gluing these pieces of wood together. I'm placing some hot glue around the edges and then pressing them together. But to make sure that everything is secure, I'm adding some popsicle sticks right along the back side. I'm placing the hot glue on the popsicle stick and then pressing that down onto the back side of my wood pieces. And I did 5 different popsicle sticks. Now I'm going to be decorating my wooden hearts. 2 of them I'm doing the same. I'm cutting a piece of this burlap fabric down to size so that it will fit right in the center of my heart. I'm then using some hot glue to attach the ribbon right in the center of my heart. I'm attaching a piece of jute on the back side of my heart using some hot glue and then wrapping that piece of jute around the heart twice. To finish these two hearts off, I'm adding a small white button right in the center of the heart on top of the jute. And for my third heart, I'm cutting this lace ribbon down to size to fit the very front of my heart, and to attach it, I'm using some hot glue. To finish this third heart, I'm attaching a piece of jute and I'm wrapping it around the center of that lace ribbon twice. Next, I've already centered my hearts on top of my piece of wood, and now I'm just putting some hot glue right on the back side of the hearts and pressing them down onto my wood to attach them. I'm making sure to hold my heart down until the glue has completely dried so that I know that they're attached really well. For the very last step in this project, I've taken 4 strands of jute and I'm tying them all together. I'm then attaching the pieces of jute on the back side of my wood. Here is my hanging heart sign all finished. This one was so easy and inexpensive to make, and I think it would pretty much go with any style of home decor. And now for my third DIY today, I'll be making decorative heart blocks. And for this project, I used 2 3.5 inch by 2 inch blocks, and then also 1 2 inch by 2 inch block. Waverly chalk paint in plaster, folk art chalk paint in castle, folk art acrylic paint in pink rose, paintbrushes, jute, lace ribbon from Hobby Lobby, cotton ribbon from the Target Dollar Spot, scissors, buttons from Dollar Tree, my hot glue gun, and wooden heart stickers from Dollar Tree. For this project, I started by painting all 3 of my blocks with my chalk paint in the color Castle. I did do 2 coats of paint on each block. After that paint has completely dried, I'm then going in with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster, and I'm dry brushing that over top of all of my blocks on all of their sides. This gives my blocks a little bit more of a rustic look. I'm using 2 of the larger hearts from my Dollar Tree pack of wooden hearts and 1 of the smaller ones. I'm using the back side of the hearts, so I just took the little stickers off of the hearts and I'm painting them with my folk art acrylic paint in rose pink, and I only did 1 coat of the paint for each heart. To decorate my first heart, I'm cutting this lace ribbon down to size. I'm then hot gluing both ends of the ribbon on the back side of the heart so that the ribbon is wrapped around the front of the heart. I'm then making a small bow out of a piece of jute and then hot gluing it right in the center of that lace ribbon. For my second larger heart, I'm taking a piece of this ivory ribbon from Dollar Tree, cutting it down to size, and then gluing the 2 ends along the back side of the heart so that the ribbon is wrapped around the front of the heart. I'm then taking a piece of jute and wrapping it in the center of that ribbon and then just hot gluing the 2 ends of that down along the back side. I'm then adding 3 of these really small light pink buttons right in the center of my heart on top of the jute. For my third and smallest heart, I'm taking 5 strands of jute that I've already cut down to size, and I'm hot gluing the ends of the jute on the back side of the heart so that the jute is wrapped around the front of the heart. And I'm also adding a piece of cotton ribbon right in the center on top of that jute. For the very last step, I'm attaching all of my hearts to my blocks. I'm placing hot glue right on the back side of all 3 hearts and then placing them right on top of the blocks. Here are the finished wooden heart blocks. Again, this project was so easy and inexpensive to create. I love with these blocks, you can either use them separately in different areas of your home, or you can use them placed all together. For DIY number 1, I'll be making a heart sign. For this project, the materials I used were this Bless Your Heart sign from Dollar Tree, the Tumbling Tower game from Dollar Tree, Waverly chalk paint in plaster, folk art chalk paint in Imperial, paintbrushes, jute, scissors, my hot glue gun, a drill, a wooden heart ornament from Dollar Tree, and alphabet stickers from Hobby Lobby. For this project, I'm going to be using the back side of this Bless Your Heart sign from Dollar Tree, and I started by painting the entire inside of the sign with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster, and I did have to do 2 coats of this paint. And then for all of the outside edges of my sign, I'm painting that with my Folk Art chalk paint in the color Imperial, and I did 2 coats of that as well, and you still kind of see the white popping through, but I didn't mind that so much because I did end up going through once my paint was dry and dry brushing over that red color just to give it a more distressed and rustic look. Next, I'm painting this wooden heart ornament from Dollar Tree with my Imperial colored chalk paint, and I did use the back side because I didn't want to use the words Happy Valentine's Day that were on the front side of it. I only did 1 coat of this paint, and then once that paint was dry, I dry brushed it with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster, once again just like I did with the outside of my sign. Now I'm attaching some jute around the edges of my heart using some hot glue. I'm putting the hot glue right around the edge of the heart and then pressing the jute over top of the glue. I did go around and do 3 different rows of the jute, and then once I had it all attached around my heart, I just cut off the ends and glued the end piece down. Next, I'm measuring my sign, and it ended up being 6 inches long, and I just needed to mark off right in the center, which was at the 3-inch mark. And then I'm taking my drill and drilling a hole right at that 3-inch mark on the top of my sign. After I have my hole drilled in the top of my sign, I'm then taking a piece of jute and stringing it through the pre-drilled hole in my heart ornament. I'm then taking those 2 pieces of jute and stringing those through the hole that I just made with my drill, tying it off at the very top with a knot, and then cutting off the extra long ends of jute. I wanted to add a little something extra in the center of my heart, so here I'm taking one of the Tumbling Tower game blocks from Dollar Tree, and I'm painting that with my Plaster color chalk paint, and I only had to do 1 coat of this paint. Once that was dry, I'm then taking this heart stencil from Dollar Tree and stenciling on one of the small hearts right in the center of the Tumbling Tower block, and I'm using my chalk paint color Imperial. And you can pick up this stencil at Dollar Tree, or you can just draw on a heart if you don't have the stencil. I'm just not very good at drawing hearts. And then I'm taking these Hobby Lobby alphabet stickers, and I'm using the letters I and U on each side of the heart so that it says I love you. Once my letters are on, I hot glued this game block right in the center of my heart, and my camera was not recording when I did that, so I didn't get that part on film. Here is my heart sign all finished. I really love how this one came together, and it was so inexpensive and easy to do. Moving right on into DIY number 2, which are standing heart blocks. For this project, I used 3 wooden hearts on dowels from Hobby Lobby, Tumbling Tower game blocks from Dollar Tree, Waverly chalk paint and Plaster, Folk Art chalk paint and Castle, paintbrushes, burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree, pink satin ribbon from Dollar Tree, cotton lace ribbon from Hobby Lobby, striped ribbon from Walmart, pearl stems from Hobby Lobby, my hot glue gun, a drill, and some scissors. I'm starting by painting all 3 of my wooden hearts with my Plaster colored chalk paint, and I made sure that I painted around all of the sides and then the back side of the heart as well, and I only had to do 1 coat of the paint. Once that was completely dried, I'm then dry brushing this Castle colored chalk paint along all of the dowels of my hearts, and I did want some of that natural color of the dowels to pop through, so that's why I'm just dry brushing it on. And I did already pre-cut my dowels down a little bit too. I did 2 of them at 4 inches in length and then 1 of them at 5 inches in length. Next, I'm painting 27 of these Tumbling Tower game blocks from Dollar Tree with my Castle colored chalk paint. I'm painting around all sides of these blocks, and I'm just doing a really light coat of the paint, so it took no time for the paint to dry, but I did need 27 of them because I'm going to be using 9 blocks for each of my heart stands. Now I'm cutting this striped ribbon down to size so that I can wrap it around the front of my heart nicely, and then I'm just gluing the ends of that ribbon right along the back side of my heart using some hot glue. Then I'm cutting this pink ribbon down to size so that I can wrap it around the front of the striped ribbon along the front of the heart, and then hot gluing the ends of the pink ribbon along the back side of my heart. Next, I'm using my scissors to cut some of these pearls off of their stems, and then I'm hot gluing them right in the center of my pink ribbon. I'm just placing the hot glue right on the back side of the pearl and then just pressing that down onto the ribbon. And I am doing 4 of these pearls across. And I did both of the hearts that are on the 4-inch dowels like this. Now for my heart that's on the 5-inch dowel, I'm cutting this burlap ribbon down, and then I'm cutting the ends of the ribbon off because I want it to be a little bit thinner than what it already is. And then I'm just cutting that down so that it can fit on the front of my heart because I'm not going to be wrapping it around the heart. I just want the ends to lay really flat. And then placing some hot glue along the back side of the ribbon and then attaching that to the very front center of my heart. Once I have that all attached, I'm then cutting down a piece of this lace ribbon down to size and then hot gluing that along the back side so that it's wrapped around the front of my heart and right in the center of my burlap ribbon. Now going back to my tumbling tower game blocks that I already have painted, I'm hot gluing them together in 3s. I'm just placing the hot glue along the side of the block and then pressing them together until the glue dries. And I'm continuing this step until I have all of my 27 blocks glued together in sets of 3. These blocks are going to be the stands for my hearts, and I am doing 9 blocks per stand, so that's why we're doing so many. Once I have them all glued together in sections of 3, I'm then gluing 3 of the 3 section pieces together on top of each other, and then I'm just switching up the pattern as I glue them together. I'm continuing to glue all 3 sections together until I have all 3 of my stands completely put together. Now that I have all 3 of my stands made, I'm then drilling a hole right in the center of all 3 of my stands, and this is going to help me be able to put my dowels right inside that hole. And then placing some hot glue right inside the hole that I just made with my drill, and then placing my dowel right inside of that hole, and I'm holding it in place until the glue has completely dried. I want to make sure that my dowel doesn't move around at all, and I did that for all 3 of my hearts. Here are my standing heart blocks all complete. I had so much fun creating these, and again, I just love how they turned out. And now for the third and final DIY for today, hinge framed hearts. For this one, I used 2 2x3-inch frames from Dollar Tree, folk art chalk paint in Castle, folk art acrylic paint in Rose Pink, paintbrushes, my hot glue gun, scissors, craft paper from Hobby Lobby, hinges from Hobby Lobby, and 2 wooden heart stickers from Dollar Tree. I'm starting out by taking both of my 2x3 frames apart that I picked up from Dollar Tree. Once I have them taken apart, I'm then painting them both in my Castle colored chalk paint, and I did have to do 3 coats of the paint just to get that black color completely covered. I'm using a glass piece from one of the frames as a guide to help me trace out the shape onto my craft paper, and I'm tracing it out twice for both of my frames. Once I have everything all drawn out, I'm then using my scissors to cut the shapes out of my craft paper. And then the wooden hearts from Dollar Tree, I'm just peeling off the stickers that came on them and then rubbing any of that sticky residue off so that I have a nice clean surface to paint on. Once I have all that sticky stuff off, I'm painting both of my hearts with my Imperial colored chalk paint, and I only did 1 coat of paint over top of the hearts. Now I'm taking one of the hinges from Hobby Lobby and placing it along the back side of one of my frames. I'm taking the screw that it came with and I'm making a little hole in the frame, and then I'm continuing to screw it into the hole. Now it is a little tricky when you first start out, but it's really helpful if you make the hole first and then screw it in. Once I have the one side screwed on, I'm taking the other frame and just making sure that everything's leveled up before I continue screwing the other screws in on the other side. And then I just continued that same step until I had both hinges screwed onto the backs of my frames. And you do want to make sure that when you're doing the hinges that you're putting them on the correct way, because I did it the wrong way my first try. Now that my hinges are on, I'm placing the glass back in the frame and then that craft paper on top of the glass that I cut out, and then placing the backing of the frame over top of that, and then just enclosing everything together. I'm then taking the wooden hearts that I painted from Dollar Tree, placing some hot glue on the back side of them, and then just hot gluing those down right on the front of the glass in the center. And I did that for both sides. Here are my hinge framed hearts all finished. This project was so inexpensive to do. I picked up those hinges from Hobby Lobby and they were less than $2. And again, I'm just so happy with how this one turned out. The first Dollar Tree DIY I'll be showing you today is a ribbon wreath. And for this one, I used a 10-inch foam wreath form, Waverly chalk paint and plaster, paint brushes, burlap ribbon, red polka dot burlap ribbon, XO ribbon, heart ribbon, Valentine's Day ribbon, scissors, jute, and my hot glue gun. For this project, I started by measuring my polka dot ribbon to the length that I thought that it would be good, which ended up being about 12 inches. I then continued to cut multiple strips of the same ribbon out so that I had enough to cover my entire wreath. I also did the same thing for the rest of my ribbons. I cut multiple strips of all of them, all at 12 inches in length. Once I have all of my ribbons cut, I'm then wrapping each ribbon around my wreath form and then tying them off in a knot. I'm continuing this around my entire wreath, and I'm just switching up in between my ribbons. The only pattern I'm really using is I'm doing about 4 of the thinner ribbons, and then I'll do a thicker burlap ribbon, either the polka dot burlap or the plain burlap, and then continue with about 4 of the thinner ribbons. And I just continue those same steps over and over again of wrapping each ribbon around my wreath form and then tying them off in a knot until I have them all completely covering my wreath. After all of my ribbons are wrapped, I'm then using some scissors to cut the ends of all of my ribbons into a diagonal. Next, I decided I wanted to use this wooden love word that I picked up from Hobby Lobby. It was just a little over $1, and I'm painting it with my Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster, and I'm painting around all of the edges and sides, and I did have to do 2 coats of this paint. After that paint has dried, I'm then centering the love word in the center of my wreath, and then adding some hot glue on the letter E and the letter L right on the sides, and then just pressing that onto the wreath to attach it. For the last step in this project, I'm adding a jute hanger on the top back part of this wreath, and to attach it, I'm using some hot glue. And here is my love ribbon wreath all finished. This one was so quick and easy to do, and it definitely fits in with the more traditional Valentine's Day decor. Now moving right on into DIY number 2, I'll be making a tissue paper heart. And for this one, the materials I used were a wooden heart, some tissue paper, matte Mod Podge, a sponge brush, nautical rope, and my hot glue gun. I started by measuring my tissue paper at about 2.5 inches in width and then continued to cut that into strips. I did stack my paper 3 sheets at a time to help save me some time when cutting. I then measured out a 2.5 by 2.5 inch square and then used one of those as a guide to help me continue cutting all of my squares. I did use 6 sheets of tissue paper for this entire project, so I just continued those same steps until I had all 6 sheets cut out into squares. And the tissue paper moves around a little bit when you're cutting, so if your squares aren't perfect, that's okay. Now that all of my squares are cut, I'm then applying the matte Mod Podge right onto the wooden heart in small sections, and then starting to apply all of my flowered tissue paper first. I'm folding up each square of the flowered paper, just rolling it up and then pressing the center of that paper right onto the glue to attach it. And then I'm continuing that step by placing a little bit of Mod Podge in a small section and then applying all of my paper. Once I have all of the flowered paper at the top, I'm then applying the light pink colored paper and just continuing those same steps as I did for the flowered paper. After I have all of the light pink colored tissue paper applied, I'm then going in with this darker pink colored paper, and I'm doing those same steps I did for the other two colors of papers to just continue covering my entire wooden heart. To finish this project, I'm applying some of this nautical rope on the back top side of my wooden heart. I'm just cutting down the nautical rope to the size that I want it to be to create my hanger, and then I'm using some hot glue to attach the rope on each side of the top of my heart. This is my tissue paper heart all finished. This one only cost me a few dollars to make, and it was so much fun and super easy to create. And now moving on to the last DIY for today, which is a reverse canvas love sign. For this one, I used a 5x7 canvas from Dollar Tree, Waverly chalk paint and plaster, Folk Art acrylic paint in pink rose, Folk Art chalk paint and castle, paintbrushes, scissors, my hot glue gun, pink ribbon, this love stencil from Michaels, but you could use this heart one from Dollar Tree, cotton lace ribbon from Hobby Lobby, and a utility knife. For this project, I'm starting by flipping my 5x7 canvas over, and I'm using my utility knife to cut off the canvas from the wood frame. You want to be really careful when doing this because you don't want to cut yourself, so just take it nice and slow. But after I got the canvas all cut around the sides, I then just started peeling the canvas from the actual wood, and I did use some scissors to help me get the edges off. I'm then cutting my canvas down a little bit. I'm just cutting around all four sides and getting rid of the extra canvas that I don't need for this project. Next, I'm painting my wood frame with my chalk paint in the color Castle. I only had to do one coat of this paint, but I did make sure that I painted around all of the inside and outside edges. Once that paint was dry, I then took my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster, and I'm dry brushing that around all of the sides and edges of my frame to give it a distressed look. Now I'm attaching my cut down canvas back onto my wood frame. I'm placing the hot glue on the back side of the frame and then pressing the canvas over top. I am using the more creamy side as the front of my picture, and the really bright white side I'm leaving for the back. I'm then placing my stencil in the center of my canvas and then starting to stencil on this acrylic rose pink color, and I am using the Dollar Tree stencil brush to do this. I really like these brushes. They are the perfect size to get in all of the little nooks and crannies, especially small stencils. I'm using a little bit of paint at a time. Less is more when you're stenciling, so I'm just building up the color until it reaches the color that I want it, and then once I have it all stenciled on, I'm just peeling off the actual stencil. Next, I'm measuring this pink satin ribbon from Dollar Tree around all four sides of the inside of my sign, and then just cutting the ribbon down to size. And then I'm gluing those ribbons around all four edges of the inside of my sign. Once I have all of my satin ribbons attached, I'm then going to be cutting this cotton lace ribbon down to size that I picked up from Hobby Lobby, and I'm just going to be attaching this lace ribbon on the top and bottom of my sign. I'm putting the hot glue right over top of the pink satin ribbon that I just attached, and then I'm pressing the lace ribbon over top of that. Now, Dollar Tree does have a really nice cotton lace ribbon, but my Dollar Tree has been out for a while, so I picked this one up from Hobby Lobby. Here is my reverse canvas love sign completed. I'm so happy with how it turned out, and all three of today's projects were so quick and easy to create. Starting with DIY gift number 1, I'll be making a potted succulent, and for this project I used a glass vase from Dollar Tree, a succulent from Walmart, rocks that I picked up from Michaels, but you could use rocks from outside, white decorative stones from Dollar Tree, a piece of chalk, and a mini chalkboard stake from Dollar Tree. For this project, I started by placing all of my rocks in the bottom of my vase. I did go with the smaller rocks just because I like the way that looks better, but you could use larger rocks if you wanted to. Once my rocks were in, I then took my succulent out of the pot that it came in and then just broke up that soil around the succulent, just enough to cover my rocks with soil, and then just stuck my succulent down into that soil. If your pot didn't provide enough soil, you could always add some cactus soil around your succulent before adding any of the rocks, but I did not need to do that for this project. And once I had the soil all where I wanted it to be, I just started placing some of these decorative white rocks from Dollar Tree at the very top around my succulent. Next up, I'm using a piece of chalk to write "I love you" on one of these chalkboard stakes that I picked up from Dollar Tree. Once I have that all written out, then I'm just simply placing my stake right down into the rocks next to my succulent. And here is my potted succulent all finished. I love the transition between the rocks and the soil. This was so inexpensive to make, and this is definitely a gift that anyone would enjoy. Now moving right on into DIY gift number 2, I'll be making Scrabble coasters. And for this project, I used a 12-inch by 12-inch corkboard from Walmart, Scrabble letters from Amazon, a utility knife, jute, Rust-Oleum Clear Matte Protective Spray Sealant, and some E6000 glue. For this project, I'm making 4 different coasters. I'm doing them in Valentine's Day or loved themed words. I'm doing 5-letter words going across and then 4 Scrabble letters going down for each coaster. I've already made all of my word with my Scrabble letters, and now I'm just setting them up how I want them to be and then placing them in all 4 corners of my 12-inch by 12-inch corkboard. Next up, I'm starting to attach all of my Scrabble letters to my corkboard, and I'm starting on the corners and then working my way in. I'm placing the E6000 glue right on the back side of my Scrabble letter and then placing it down onto the corkboard, and I'm just continuing that same step over and over again for the entire coaster. What's great about the E6000 glue is it does take a while for it to dry, so you can move the Scrabble letters around a little bit so that they're perfectly in line with each other. It doesn't dry right away and then here you've messed up. So you can work with it a little bit to make sure that all of your Scrabble letters are even. And you only have to use a small amount of glue. If you use too much, it might spread out past your letters, and you don't want that. Now that my letters are all glued on, I'm placing another piece of corkboard over top to hold everything into place and letting it sit for 24 hours for the glue to dry. It's been 24 hours and all of my glue has dried. I'm now taking a utility knife and cutting a square in my corkboard around all of my Scrabble letters, and I'm continuing that same step for all 4 of my coasters. It's also important to use a really sharp utility knife. It makes cutting through the corkboard a lot easier, and you're less likely to have your cork crumble around the edges. Next, I'm spraying all of my coasters with my Rust-Oleum Clear Matte Sealant Spray. You want to make sure that these are water resistant since they are coasters. I'm stacking all 4 coasters on top of each other, and to make them look nice and presentable as a gift, I'm tying a piece of jute around them to hold them all together and then just tying a bow on the front. Here are my Scrabble coasters all finished. You can do these in so many different words to really customize them to whoever you're giving the gift to, and again, these would be the perfect gift that anyone would love. Now going right on into DIY gift number 3, a date night jar. For this project, I used a jar from Dollar Tree, Waverly chalk paint and plaster, folk art chalk paint and Imperial, paintbrushes, red and white twine from the Target Dollar Spot, a black Sharpie pen, a red marker, popsicle sticks, and a wooden heart sticker from Dollar Tree. For this project, I'm using the back side of this sticker heart, and I'm peeling the sticker off of the heart and then just rubbing off any of that sticky residue so that I have a nice clean surface. I'm then painting my heart with my Waverly chalk paint in the colored plaster, and I only had to do 1 coat of this paint. Next, I'm painting the ends of 10 different popsicle sticks with my folk art chalk paint in the color Imperial. I did paint the front side and the back side of these sticks. Once I had those painted, then I'm painting the ends of 10 more popsicle sticks with my plaster color chalk paint. After the paint has dried, I'm then writing 20 different date night ideas on my popsicle sticks. For the 10 red sticks, I'm doing all going out date night ideas, and then for all of the white colored sticks, I'm doing all date nights that you can do at home. Now, obviously, your dates are customizable to what you and your spouse or you and your boyfriend or girlfriend like to do. I will leave the ones that I put on my sticks down in the description box in case you guys are looking for ideas. I'm now writing date night on my painted heart, and then I'm labeling the two colors red and white for either at home or going out date nights. Next, I'm wrapping this red and white twine twice around the top of my jar and then tying that off in a knot, but I'm leaving the two long strands of the twine because now I'm going to be placing some hot glue on the back of the heart and then attaching it to those two strands. And for the very last step in this project, I'm just simply placing all of my popsicle sticks in my jar and then screwing on the lid. This is my date night jar all finished. It was so inexpensive to make, and it's such a fun and creative gift to give your significant other on Valentine's Day. And now for the last DIY gift idea for today. I'll be making an at-home movie date night box. And for this project, I used a wooden crate from the Target dollar spot, but you can always use any kind of container or box that you choose to. Waverly chalk paint in plaster, paintbrushes, red and white twine from the Target dollar spot, a black Sharpie marker, a wooden ornament from Dollar Tree, 2 wine glasses from Dollar Tree, and then a bottle of wine, but you could always do a bag of coffee with coffee mugs or sodas, whatever kind of drink that you choose. And then of course, all of the yummy movie snacks. For this project, I started out by painting my heart ornament from Dollar Tree with my chalk paint in the color plaster, and I did only have to do 1 coat of this paint. Once the paint was completely dried, I'm then writing movie date night with my black Sharpie marker right over the front of the heart. Next, I'm stringing the red and white twine through the hole in my ornament and then tying a knot close to the top of my heart. This is going to help the heart lay flat on the front of my crate. I'm tying each strand of my twine around both handles of my crate so that my movie date night heart sits flat across the front of my crate. And for the very last step, I'm filling my crate with the 2 wine glasses, the bottle of wine, and then of course the really good movie snacks. What's great about this gift is you can customize it to however you want. You can put whatever snacks you want in there. If you're a significant other and you don't drink wine, you could do coffee or soda. Here is my movie date night box all finished. It was such a simple and inexpensive gift idea.
And that was it for all 26 of my Valentine's Day DIYs. I hope that I was able to give you some inspiration to get started on your Valentine's Day projects this year. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, I hope that you will consider subscribing, and please be sure to hit the notification bell. Thank you so much for watching.